Paul Masterson.
Deputy Speaker, it is a pleasure as always to follow my honourable friend, the Isle of Wight, although in this debate probably a bit of a misfortune, as I think his experience and knowledge and passion in these areas is pretty much unmatched within the House, certainly significantly unmatched by me, but we will see how we get on over the next few minutes nevertheless. I'd like to congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Tonbridge and Malling, and his committee for securing this important debate. And I also welcome the Government's aspirations to ensure that the UK retains its influence and status as we prepare to leave the European Union. Now, it is easy to be glib about the phrase Global Britain, as a succession of individuals on this side of the House try and shoehorn it into pretty much every eventuality that they can. And it is really important that that soundbite doesn't become to be perceived as meaning nothing. And I think that the Foreign Affairs Select Committee have been right to actually push and prod at what does this government mean by Global Britain? What does the actual practical vision look like in terms of its implementation? What are our priorities? What are we seeking to achieve? But I do think that the United Kingdom has always known the concept of Global Britain. We've constantly taken a leading role in responding to global challenges and standing up for the rules-based international order. And what really matters is the substance sitting behind the phrase and how we ensure that it doesn't just become a tagline, but a credible position where our vision and values are put into action. Once we leave the European Union, our interaction with the rest of the world will change. There is no point in denying that in the last few decades, our influence has been amplified by the force multiplier advantage of EU membership. It is also true that after exit day, we will gain more flexibility and agility to react. And so I think our main challenge, and one of the big challenges for the Foreign Office, will be to combine this extra flexibility with a strong foreign policy capability that ensures we continue to be one of the major global players. And I think the resources that the FCO allocates to its European network are going to be crucial to its ability to implement a coherent diplomatic strategy both in Europe and around the world, particularly post-Brexit. And I'm pleased that the FCO has taken my honourable friend committee's advice and started increasing its diplomatic presence in EU 27 capitals, focusing, I think, primarily in the first instance on Berlin and Paris, and prioritising political and economic staff and research analysts. However, I think the key thing as we move forward is that the allocation of resources can't come at the expense of existing networks in other parts of the world, both those which are pretty established and those we're seeking to establish. We do have networks around the world that are not fully developed, simply because our government has for years, and indeed our citizens have for years, been able to rely on other EU states' existing networks. And I think if we are to truly be Global Britain, we can't start hiving off or undermining our presence in one part of the world to build it up in another. So I would be quite interested to hear in the Minister's response how the very welcome additional funding of 90 million to support the Government's Global Britain ambitions is intended to be used. Madam Deputy Speaker, a strong diplomatic footprint doesn't just help us promote a set of values founded on democracy and the rule of law, it also helps keep the citizens of our country safe. And I think we've seen how a weakened rules-based international system can lead to episodes like we've seen in Salisbury. Vile actions commissioned by a rogue state which systematically makes a mockery of international rules and basic principles of decency. Whether that's in Georgia, something which I've banged on about quite a lot since I've been elected because not many people seem to talk about it, Crimea, or indeed the Middle East. And I remember as an honours year student at Dundee Law School doing my dissertation on how international institutions responded to 9/11 and conflicts that had come before it, and how often these very significant events exposed weaknesses in the very international institutions we expect to demand and uphold the rule-based order. Now, I'll be honest, my dissertation wasn't very good. I found lots of other things at university to focus my time on than the library. But I do think the underlying point that I was supposed to be investigating was right. And we still see that today in how multilateral organisations respond to Russia, Syria and plenty of other examples. And establishing and upholding accepted standards of the rule-based order must be a central tenet of what Global Britain stands for, because countries like Russia exploit instability. Madam Deputy Speaker, to me, Global Britain is about championing Britain's place as a force for good in the world. It is about ensuring we are an outward, forward-looking nation which seeks to build friendships and stands up for our values where they come under threat. Global Britain in action was the international coordinated expulsion of Russian envoys following Salisbury. Global Britain is the soft power and reach of over 5 million British citizens living overseas. It's the BBC World Service and our phenomenal universities and research institutions which export talent, friendships and contacts. It is being the only permanent member of the UN Security Council that meets both the defence target and the development target. Global Britain isn't an empty soundbite. It's a definition for what our country must and needs to be as we face the challenges of today, as well as those that lie ahead.